Welcome to the Center for Distance and Online Education, Tezpur University. I am Dr. Tinam Borah, and I am guest faculty for Mass Communication and Journalism at the CDOE. In today's video lecture, I'm going to discuss the theories of communication, which is part of MMC 101, that is Introduction to Communication and Media, Unit 7. In our lecture, we are going to overview an introduction to communication theories, understand the objectives of this lecture. We discuss a little about the early communication theories. We discuss a few of the most important early theories. And then we are going to sum up and then run through a few questions that might be possible. And there's a list of recommended readings which you can go through for further exploration. Famous communication theorist Robert Craig once said that although there exist many theories of communication, there is no consensus on communication theory as a field. Therefore, in an attempt to unify this rather disparate field and address its complexities, Craig proposed a vision for communication theory, which focused on communication theory as a practical discipline. And he showed how various traditions of communication theory can be engaged in dialogue on the practice of communication. So in this lecture, we're going to understand different types of communication theories. We're going to do a thorough study of few of the different theories, and we'll attempt to explain the cultural approaches to communication theories. As we know, we are all living in the information age, and this is an age that is characterized by rapid and rampant information processing. So often, several questions about media are raised in the minds of the audiences. What kind of role do mass media play in the society? Are mass media a result of societal changes or simply a response to demands? Do media reflect or shape society? How powerful is the media? Does media serve the public any good? Do media contribute to societal integration or disintegration? Thus, the purpose of communication theories is to answer these questions about the media's influence on society and individuals. Some of the early theories of mass media were concerned with the effects of mass communication. That is, they tried to understand what kind of effects mass communication had on the audience. And these theories were mostly based on the assumption that mass media have a direct and powerful influence on society. However, in later times, these questions were these questions regarding the direct influence of the mass communication or the mass media, these were changed, and later research challenged the direct cause and effect relationships between media and society. So now these later researchers, they focused on individual differences, and they also took into account the importance of personal influences on how messages are transmitted, accepted, and retained. There were also some sociological perspectives which viewed mass media as an outcome of societal changes. Some political and economic influences which looked at media behavior, which is expected to align with prevailing conditions. And there were also theories that provided insights into how audiences use media. So these are the different types, different bases on which several theories were emerged. So at the beginning, let us go and discuss one of the earliest media theories, which is known as the hypodermic needle theory or the bullet theory. So this is one of the most basic theories, and this theory was introduced by Harold Laswell. So Laswell is now taking into account the mass media which were prevalent in the 1940s and 1950s. And this theory implied that the mass media has a very direct and immediate and powerful effect on its audiences. The mass media in the 1940s and 50s were perceived as a powerful influence on individual change. So, just like a hypodermic needle, messages that came from the media were assumed to affect the audience directly. Why this assumption was made? The fast rise and popularization of radio and television led to this kind of a theory. The emergence of the persuasion industry, such as advertising and propaganda. The advertising industry was just starting to grow. There was a lot of political propaganda that was on the rounds. And a study, which is known as the Pain Fund Studies of the 1930s, this study also focused on the impact of motion pictures on children. At the same time, Hitler's monopolization of the mass media during World War II, which was used to unify the German public behind the Nazi party, all of these reasons, led to the belief that the media directly influences the audience very powerfully. That is, the audience had no choice but to believe what the media is feeding them. So, this theory suggests that the mass media could influence a very large group of people directly and uniformly by just shooting or injecting them with messages designed to trigger a desired response. The message is compared with a bullet fired from the media gun into the viewer's mind. And it also takes into assumption the fact that audience is passive. It's the media that is active, and the audience is influenced immediately. Next, we come to the two-step flow theory. This theory was first introduced by Paul Lazarsfeld, Bernard Berelson, and Hazel Goddard in The People's Choice after research into voters' decision-making processes during the 1940 US presidential election. So, this research, which took place during the US presidential election, they discovered that most of the voters in this election got their information about the candidates from other people who read about the campaign in the newspapers and not directly from the media. So, this theory asserts that information from the media moves in two distinct stages. First, the individuals, that is, opinion leaders, who pay close attention to the mass media and its messages, receive the information. And then these opinion leaders pass on their own interpretations in addition to the actual media content. And this also implies that most people receive information from opinion leaders through interpersonal communication rather than directly from mass media. So Lazarsfeld, Berelson, and Goddard concluded that word of mouth transmission of information plays an important role in the communication process and that mass media have only a limited influence on most individuals. So they identified the two distinct steps, that first the information is received by the opinion leaders and they are the ones who influence the rest of the public. So this is a graphical representation of the two-step flow of communication. So this theory of the two-step flow of communication reversed the dominant paradigm in mass communication at the time. So the dominant paradigm, as suggested by the hypodermic needle theory, was that the media has a direct and a very powerful influence on the audience. And this theory of two-step flow of communication kind of challenged that viewpoint. So before Lazarsfeld's study, it was assumed that mass media have a direct influence on mass audience who consume and absorb media messages. Media were thought to significantly influence people's decisions and behaviors. According to the study, factors such as interpersonal communication with family members, friends, and members of one's social and professional circles turned out to be better predictors of a person's voting behavior than that person's media exposure. Basically, this means to say that a person decides whom to vote not on their own direct influence of the media, but their interactions with their family members, with their social circle, and other friends It is on the basis of a collective influence of all these factors that people take their voting decisions. So these findings came to be known as the limited effects paradigm of media influence. Next, the theory of the two-step flow communication was developed by Lazarsfeld together with Elihu Katz in the book Personal Influence. This book explains that people's reactions to media messages are mediated by interpersonal communication with members of their social environment. A person's membership in different social groups, that is, family, friends, professional, and religious associations, etc., has more influence on that person's decision making processes and behavior than does information from mass media. Researchers of mass communication cannot therefore treat the public as a homogeneous mass audience that actively processes and responds to media messages uniformly. No, mass audience is not homogeneous, they are not the same, and every individual may receive message differently and respond to this media messages differently. Next, let's discuss about the multi-step flow of communication. The multi-step flow of communication theory is an improvement over the two-step flow of communication theory, and it is further trying to overcome the limitations of the two-step flow of communication theory. The multi-step flow goes through several channels of interpretation before it finally gets to the intended or targeted user. According to it, opinion leaders interfere between the media's direct message and the audience's reaction to it. Opinion leaders influence others to change their attitudes and behaviors more quickly than formal media because the audience is able to relate to an opinion leader than an article in newspaper. So, as you can see in this diagram, even after the opinion leaders, the messages go through different steps before the receivers or the seekers take any decisions. So this multi-step flow theory shows that any information decisions taken by opinion receivers uh, take decisions more quickly when received information from opinion leaders rather than when they receive information from mass media directly. So the exact number of steps in the process depends on several factors, like the intentions of the source, the availability of mass media, the extent of audience exposure to agencies of communication, the nature of the message, and the importance of the message to the audience. So all these different steps will finally decide how a particular media message will influence one particular member of the audience. There are several factors, several steps included in this process. Next, let's move on to another important theory, that is cultivation theory. Cultivation theory was introduced by George Gerbner. This theory examines the long-term effects of television on audiences. This theory studies how television shapes concepts of social reality. It argues that the mass media cultivate attitudes and values which are already present in a culture. So, this theory suggests that people who watch television for more than 4 hours a day, and they are defined as heavy television viewers. So, this theory suggests that these people, these heavy television viewers, see the world as more violent than it actually is. It is assumed that mass media have a subtle influence on audiences who, in turn, unknowingly absorb the dominant symbols, images, and messages of the media, which results in the cultivation of a dominant image pattern. So it means that the more TV we are exposed to, the more we start believing in the content of the television, the content which is shown on the TV. And we absorb the symbols, the images, and the messages of the media unknowingly, and we start to believe that that is, in fact, reality. Television is responsible for shaping or cultivating viewers' conceptions of social reality. So, this theory makes an assumption that heavy viewership of television, when we watch television for long hours, we start cultivating our concept of the world on the basis of what we are watching on the television. So the mass media cultivate attitudes and values which are already present in a culture. It is already present in the culture. It is telling us to take up those same attitudes and values by, uh, by dint of our long exposure to that mass media content. The media maintain and propagate these values amongst members of a culture, thus binding it together. So, television, in a way, kinds of binds diverse communities together by socializing people into standardized roles and behaviors. So, television functions as part of the enculturation process. It is, you can also term it as the socialization process. It is part of the socialization process that is um, internalizing certain values and attitudes that are already present in the culture. We internalize them by believing that that is indeed what it is. That is indeed what the reality is, by viewing as it is shown in the television. So, cultivation theory also distinguishes between first order effects, that is, general beliefs about the everyday world, such as about the prevalence of violence. So, first order effects or general beliefs about the everyday world. For example, if I'm someone who watches a lot of television where violence is overly glorified, I start to believe that the world is actually a very violent place to live in. And I kind of develop specific attitudes such as to law and order, or to personal safety. So my depending on the content I watch on television, I might start believing that the world is like this in this context. For example, I might feel unsafe in this in reality. This theory also distinguishes between the heavy viewers and the light viewers of television. Heavy viewers, like I said, are viewers who watch television for more than 4 hours a day, and light viewers who watch less than 2 hours a day are termed as light viewers. It also introduces the concept of mean world syndrome. So, as I just recently explained, mean world syndrome means that as I expose myself to more and more violence that is shown on television, I start believing in the reality. I start believing that the world is a mean place, and that becomes my reality. It also talks about mainstreaming, the process of blurring, blending, and bending. So, the process of blurring, blending, and bending refers to how television kind of standardizes certain concepts or stereotypes certain concepts. So, it kind of blurs the distinction between reality and what is real and what is not. It blends everything together, and it can also bend what is believed to be a dominant cultural belief by its portrayal of something different. Next, we have the uses and gratification theory, which was introduced in 1974 by Blumler and Katz as a reaction to traditional mass communication research. So, at that time, many theories that used to view media users as passive. Now, this theory, that is the uses and gratification theory, started to look at users as active agents, that is, the audience as active agents who do have control over their media consumption. So just like we had discussed in two of our previous theories, where in hypodermic needle theory, we learned that the theory assumes that the audience is passive. But this theory, the uses and gratification theory here, believes that the users of mass media, that is the audience, are not passive, but active users who have complete control over their media consumption. It explains how people use the media for their own need and get satisfied when their needs are fulfilled. In other words, it can be said that the theory argues what people do with media rather than what media does to people. The key assumptions of this theory are that media use is goal oriented. People are motivated to consume media. That media is selectively based on the expectation that it will satisfy specific needs and desires. Media influence on behavior is filtered through social and psychological factors. Thus, personality and social context impact the media choices one makes and one's interpretation of media messages. That means, depending on our personality and the social context that we are living in, we may all make different media choices, and our interpretation of media messages might all be different. So media are in competition with various forms of competition for individuals' attention, even more so in present times. For example, an individual may choose to have an in-person conversation about an issue instead of watching a documentary about the issue. So people are usually in control of media and therefore not particularly influenced by it. So this theory is completely disregarding, or you know refuting the previous claim of earlier theories that the audience is passive and would believe anything the media would feed them. But this theory is suggesting that people are in control of media and they will choose their choice of media on the basis of their personality and their need. So it is saying that we all have different needs. So we all have cognitive needs like the desire for acquiring knowledge, information, and understanding. We may have affective needs, that is, the need for emotional fulfillment, such as feelings of pleasure or inspiration. We may have personal integrative needs, that is, the need for self esteem, confidence, and personal stability. That is also something we may seek through media. Social integrative needs, the desire to connect and build relationships with others through shared media experiences. That is where social media comes in. And entertainment needs, the need for relaxation, escape, and amusement through enjoyable media content. So people have these different kinds of needs, and on the basis of their particular needs, they choose and consume media differently. So, in conclusion, uses and gratifications characterizes people as active and motivated in selecting the media they choose to consume. The theory relies on two principles. One, that media users are active in their selection of the media they consume, and they are aware of their reasons for selecting different media options. For example, for my cognitive needs, I might seek out news, but for some other needs, I might seek out the social media. The greater control and choice brought about by new media has opened up new avenues of uses and gratifications research and has led to the discovery of new gratifications, especially in regards to social media. So, taken together, uses and gratifications theory stresses the power of the individual over the power of the media. Also, individual differences mediate the relationship between media and their effects. This results in media effects being driven as much by the media user as by the media content itself. So, even if people take in the same media message, each individual will ultimately be impacted by the message differently. And next, we come to another very important theory, that is the agenda setting theory. This theory was introduced by Maxwell McCombs and Donald L. Shaw in the year 1972. And this theory describes the ability of the news media to influence the importance placed on the topics of the public agenda. So, we all read different news stories in the newspapers, or different news stories appear in our news feed on our social media, or different news stories come into the headlines of the television news headlines every day. Now, I'm sure, and I'm sure you all agree to this, that all the important news do not get featured in our uh, prime time news. So who decides and what ensures that something that happens is featured in the news or in the headlines? So agenda setting theory refers to how the media's news coverage determines which issues become the focus of public attention. Manipulation of public awareness and concern of salient issues by the news media. This is a very common happening in the news media today. So we can see from our day-to-day examples also that certain news stories which are important may not always be featured by uh, important or leading news agencies or publication houses. So this theory is built on the notion that the mass media sets the agenda for what people should care about. It is the mass media, it is the media that is telling us, oh, this is a topic you need to think about. This is not a topic that needs your attention. So I'm sure these are the kind of headlines we all come across. Breaking news, shocking news, latest news, extra, good news, top news, special report. So it is through these kinds of tactics that the newspapers or television channels or even social media now tells us which are the topics that need to be talked about, which need to be discussed, which we all need to think about. They are not telling us what to think about, but they are giving us the topics which needed to be discussed by the public. So when a particular news report is given more importance and attention than other news, the audience will automatically perceive it as the most important news and information being given to them. The priorities of which news comes first and then the next are set by the media according to how people think and how much influence will it have among the audience. So agenda setting occurs through a cognitive process known as accessibility. The media provides information which is the most relevant food for thought, portrays the major issues of the society, and reflects people's minds. So the agenda setting theory rests on two basic assumptions. The first is that the media filters and shapes what we see rather than just reflecting stories to the audience. The media is not simply reflecting what is happening and giving it to the audience, but they filter through and gives it a particular shape before releasing it to the audience, so that they are kind of deciding for the audience which are the news stories the audience will think about and in what shape, in what kind of angle the audience will look at it. Everything is decided by the media. So an example of this is seeing a sensational or scandalous story at the top of a broadcast as opposed to a story that happened more recently or one that affects more people, such as an approaching storm or legislative tax reform. So often, sometimes, a scandalous story or a sensational story will get more importance than probably something which although concerns more individuals, but because the media is paying more attention to the sensational news, all audience will also be attracted more towards that sensational news because they are led to believe that that sensational news is of more importance. The second assumption is that the more attention the media gives to an issue, the more likely the public will consider that issue to be important. So if we look at it from another perspective, We can say that mass media organizations are not telling us what to think or how we should feel about a story or issue, but are giving us certain stories or issues that people should think more about. There is psychological and scientific merit to the agenda setting theory. The more a story is publicized in the mass media, the more it becomes prominently stored in individuals' memories when they are asked to recall it, even if it doesn't specifically affect them or register as a prominent issue in their minds. So, whenever certain stories are reported by multiple media houses, or when we keep seeing the same stories, for example, in times of social media now, whatever stories are being shared by everyone in our feeds, we kind of get the idea that, oh, this is an important story that we need to also, even if by now I have not paid attention to it, just because everybody is sharing it, I start to feel that this is an important story and I should probably look more into it. So, agenda setting theory is used in political ads, campaigns, news, public relation, etc. The main concept associated with the theory is gatekeeping. So, gatekeeping is in charge of and has control of the selection of content discussed in the media. It is assumed that the public cares mostly about the product of a media gatekeeping. So, editors are the gatekeepers of media. The news media decides what events to broadcast and show through the media gates on the basis of newsworthiness. So, based on which stories they feel will get more attention or more popularity, it's the editors who decide which are the events or which are the news items which need to be broadcast or brought to the public. For example, news comes from various sources, and editors choose what should appear and what should not. That's why they are called gatekeepers. So, in summary, we have discussed about the early communication theories that focused on understanding the effects of mass media on society, primarily viewing media as a powerful influence on audiences. These theories examined how media shapes beliefs and behaviors, often emphasizing direct cause and effect relationships. In the bullet theory, also known as the hypodermic needle theory, uh, posits that media messages are injected directly into the audience, leading to immediate and uniform effects. This model suggests that viewers passively absorb information without critical engagement. And the two-step flow theory asserts that media effects are mediated by opinion leaders who first interpret and pass information to others, highlighting a more interactive communication process. Multi-step flow extends this concept, acknowledging the complexity of influence and the multiple channels through which media messages are disseminated. Cultivation theory then suggests that prolonged exposure to television content shapes viewers' perceptions of reality, leading to shared beliefs, particularly among heavy viewers. It emphasizes the cumulative effects of media over time, resulting in a distorted worldview. The uses and gratification theory explores how audiences actively select media based on their individual needs and motivations, such as information, entertainment, or social interaction. This approach highlights the active role of users in their media consumption. Agenda setting theory posits that media doesn't tell us what to think, but influences what we think about by highlighting certain issues and topics. This theory emphasizes the media's role in shaping public priorities and the importance of coverage in driving social discourse. You can take a look at these possible questions. How do early communication theories differ in their views on media influence compared to modern theories like uses and gratification? What evidence supports the claim of cultivation theory regarding the effects of prolonged television exposure on viewers' perceptions? In what ways do opinion leaders play a crucial role in the two-step flow theory of communication? How can the agenda setting theory be observed in contemporary media coverage of social and political issues? And what are the implications of the bullet theory for understanding audience engagement with the media content in today's digital landscape? Here's a list of further reading. And with that, we come to an end to today's lecture. I hope you have understood the basic concepts of these theories, and we shall meet again with more theories which we shall discuss in the next video lectures. Thank you so much.